All right, welcome everybody. Glad to have you here. This is our first Cal APA workshop, and I'm excited to have you all here. Again, it's interactive, so you can stop me, you can pause, you can ask questions as you like, and you can also put things in the chat as needed because we do have somebody monitoring that as we go. So I did put a website into the chat, and I'm going to do it again. This is again, our colleagues at Sacramento County Office of Ed have prepared this for you. So I would strongly suggest, and I will send this out again if you need it, that you bookmark this because it has all three trainings that we're going to use pretty much for Cal APA, and it also has the resources. So I'm going to walk you through it real quickly. I'm going to share my screen here and just give you a quick tour of this. Can you guys see my screen okay? Okay, just want to check. So with that, you'll see that if you go to the website, it'll bring you to the cycle 1, 2, and 3. And you can also navigate it up here where it says cycle 1, 2, 3. Okay. If you click on cycle 1, it'll take you to the cycle 1. It'll give you an overview and it'll give you some resources. This resource here is your performance assessment guide. And this will tell you all the stuff that I'm going to go over tonight as well, but it's in a guide from the state. So what I tell people all the time is if you have a question, first, go back to what you know from the training. Second, go back to the performance guide. And third, let me know if you need help. There's a version of a slide deck here. I've altered the one I'm showing tonight, but it's basically the same information. So you have a copy of my slide or the slide deck right here. All right, there's also some vocabulary that might be helpful for you, and that's a slidable piece. All this is you can click on it and download it and take a look at it and have it for your resources. All right, I also want you to understand if you go up here where it's a cycle 1 and pull down menu, it'll go over each different part and give you instructions and the templates that you can use to upload. All right. So all your resources are there, including the rubrics for each part too, on how each part is scored. All right, so this is really valuable stuff here. All right, it also, this piece here on your evidence table, this is exactly what you need to turn in. So this is really important for you as well. Also, we provided samples from last year. Okay, so if you want to see what it looks like, you can kind of have an idea. There are some samples provided for you. Okay. Before I move forward, any questions on the website? All right. I would strongly suggest you use the website, folks. I really would. It's a great resource. And again, if you need to refer to things, I would go back to it. Okay. So with that, let us begin. Hopefully you can still see the screen. So again, this is just that website I talked to you about. So if you don't have it, or if new people come in, I will put that in the chat in a little bit. Originally, I wanted you to have your performance guide out, but I'd rather you not this time. It's okay. But I want you to understand you have that performance guide. It's both in the Google Docs that I've set up, as well as in that website. So important dates, and I went over these at the beginning of the program, but for today, the most important date is 1 week before Christmas, you get to celebrate with turning in your first submission of Cal APA. Okay, so it is due the 15th. There is a guide in the website that'll tell you if you turn it in by the 15th, you're guaranteed to have a score back by a certain date. All right, so the goal is to have this in by the 15th. If you don't turn it in by the 15th, it's not going to be the end of the world, but it's going to delay your results, which in turn is going to delay how you get to do the second one. Right, and put you behind. I would strongly try your best to do this. Also understand there's about 5 million people across the state of California trying to turn this in by that December 15th date. And so if you wait till that night at 10 o'clock when it's due at midnight, it's probably going to take you 4 to 7 hours to upload it. And you're going to miss the deadline anyhow. So I would try to upload a day or two in advance if possible. All right. The other piece too is that I will tell you, I'm happy to give you feedback or comments on your work as we go. And so most people try to share a Google Doc with me, and then I can make comments directly on that Google Doc if you want to do it that way. What I'm not going to do is say, this is great, you're going to pass. Right? What I will do is say, your work looks pretty solid. There's a couple things you might want to look at. Okay. But I'm not going to do it if you give it to me on the 13th or 14th. My turnaround time is usually 4 or 5 days because, again, I've got a lot of people asking for support. Okay. February 16th and April 13th are cycle 2 and 3, but we're going to not worry about that right now. As I said earlier, when I did the orientation, there's 4 parts to every Cal APA. There's the investigate stage, which basically, as long as you answer the data or questions and fill out the data table, you can't do badly on this. Okay, but you have to answer the questions correctly. Then you're going to plan, which we'll talk about here. You're going to act and reflect. All right. In Cal APA 1, there's really not too many tricks. You are going to have to look in the dashboard and get data, though. And so we'll talk about that in a second. The basically content overview of this is you're going to look at data, multiple sources. You're going to look at the dashboard, but you're also going to have to get qualitative and quantitative data by doing some interviews and asking some people questions about their reality when it comes to the data. You're going to analyze those multiple sources, right? And again, you're going to balance out the quantitative and qualitative data. You'll conduct an equity gap analysis. So basically, what we're trying to do here, and I'm going to be very clear about this, you're going to look at the data and you're going to see what group has historically been most marginalized over the last 3 years. And that lies your equity gap. Now, you're going to pick an area of the dashboard. So you're going to display data, but you might find that it might be like one group or the other, right, in a certain area. So I would say, depending on the needs of your students that you know at your school or district, I would pick the group, like, let's say you have a suspension disparity, right? You might want to pick that. However, if there's a math or English gap, you might want to pick that. And you're also going to have to come up with a problem statement that clearly states our students at blank and blank high school have disproportionality and African-American male students are being suspended 5 times more than everybody else. Very succinct, clear, data-based. I see a hand up, please.
Yes, Ross. For the school, is this like our own school that we're at, or the school that we've chosen to look at?
So here's what I would say. Your own school is always best. However, I have some people contact me and say, look, our school's new. We only have 1 or 2 years of data. You're going to need 3. You are going to have to do interviews and access some people for, for beyond just the data from the dashboard. So I would say if you're able to use your own school, it's always best, but it might not be possible.
And what about this COVID thing? So like when I was on the dashboard for a lot of the schools, even in my own district, most of them don't have any data for 2 years.
Yeah, you use the last 3 years of available data.
So 17, 18, 19.
Yeah, unfortunately, because that's what they had to do the year before too. Yeah, I know it's less than ideal.
Okay.
But let me give you a little hint that we didn't get any better during the pandemic. So I'm sure that the gap is still existing. And I don't mean that to be mean or anything. Like you guys know.
That's not taking away from us when it comes to turning in stuff. Okay.
No, trust me, they know this. As a grader myself, we know this. So yeah, you're fine. Yeah. Great question though. Anything else in the chats now? Did we miss anything?
No, I think the other question was, do the 3 years have to be consecutive? But you answered that.
Okay. All right. Are we good to move forward? Excellent questions, by the way. And I appreciate you guys doing that. And if I don't see your hand raised, I'm trying to be good at it. If I don't, then please feel free to say, Ross, I have a question. Okay, or chat it, and Stan will stop me. All right. So with that, what we're really doing is looking at that gap analysis, and then we're going to look for institutional or structural factors that contribute to that equity gap, right? And then what we're really doing as a result of that is looking at what is our school vision, and does the data really mesh with what our school vision and mission is? Okay, and then we need to look at what is our kind of related developing vision for equity for all students and learning. Okay, here's what I mean by that. If you have a school mission and vision that say all kids should graduate college and career ready, which is almost any high school in all of California, then how does that mesh with what your data is saying if you're suspending a certain group? Or if your kids are failing math and English, right? If they're EL learners, or if, whatever it might be, right? And so what we're really looking to do is find out, how does our mission and vision jive with what the results we're getting on the state data is? You're also going to develop potential strategies for equitable school improvement. We'll talk about that as we move forward. And then you're also going to reflect on the capacity to identify causal factors. Why is this happening? Right? Because again, if we're going to address it, then we need to be able to find out what's causing it, right? I will tell you this right now, you're not going to solve this problem. In Cal APA 2, you're going to work around a community of practice that is going to have to be, based on a problem of practice. It could be the same, but here you're not solving it. You're trying to look at what's the root cause of it, right? And so you're going to identify it. You're going to find out what the problem statement is. You're going to look at root causes, but you're not solving the problem. All right. You might look at some research that says what the best way is, but you're not going to be solving. I'm not going to go over the key vocabulary, but it's very helpful for you as we go through. If in the question it says, what's your academic problem statement? I would go here and look at this because it'll give you language around that. Okay. Also look at the samples. They will set you free in a lot of ways. And again, I'm not going to go over the vocabulary. You guys are all adult learners. You can figure that out. All right. So let's talk about step one. You're going to investigate. And so whatever school you're choosing to use, you need to get a hold of their mission and vision. It's usually on the website or their WASC document, or it's usually plastered on the, on their homepage of every website, but you need to get a hold of that, right? So that's the first thing. And remember, the first couple questions you can't get them wrong as long as you answer them. It'll say, what is the mission and vision of the school, right? We'll look at them in a second. And then you're going to look at a state indicator. So here's the big six, right? And if you go to your dashboard, you'll see this. It's chronic absenteeism, suspension rate, EL progress, graduation rate, academic performance, which will come across as math or English, and or CCI or college and career readiness or indicators. Okay. Hopefully this isn't foreign to you. You may not have gotten in the dashboard, right? But if you haven't, it's a great time to do it. So as I say that, I see that there's something in the chat. Snea, did I miss anything or are we good?
No, I don't see anything new.
Okay.
But I've got a question, Ross.
Yeah, please.
So I was looking at the dashboard and I found it was under academic performance, but more aligned to district's implementation of standards. And then it went into like policies and programs and instructional implementation and something else. And it assessed each content area, the main four. And our ELA and math were doing great, but our social studies and science were like 1s and 2s. Is that an area of focus that could be good, or is that too
what data are you looking at? Because the California State Dashboard is not going to give you social studies and science.
It did when it was talking about alignment to standards.
So
I don't know
what
where
I
it's
would
coming
say
from,
is what you're really looking for is on the indicators. Are any of these listed? The academic indicators, you're looking at English language arts or math.
Okay.
So I would stick to that. But I'm not sure what part of the dashboard you're looking at. So maybe we can walk through that. Nicole, I'm happy to look at that, but I'm not sure. It's obvious you're at an elementary school, right? No?
No, I'm at the district office and I work with 6th through 12th grade sites.
Yeah. Okay. So you're probably getting some of the 6th grade material. So we can look at that, but yeah,
Okay.
you want to stick to basically the math and English and you won't have college career readiness unless you're looking at 12th. I would pick a site though, and not district if I was you.
Okay. Good to know. Thank you.
Yeah, please. If you're a district office person, pick a site and go with that. I would strongly suggest that. Because you might have different schools with different indicators that don't balance out well. And so the needs of every site is unique, and I would focus on that. You are also, from this investigation, right, after you look at this, you're going to look at the quantitative data analysis, and you're going to identify one group to study throughout this, right? One group. Let me be very clear on this. Last year, some people tried to say it's this group and that group. Nope. Pick the most marginalized in the area you choose. Okay. You're going to collect the qualitative data to further understand potential equity gaps and then conduct an equity gap analysis identified. So you're going to have to pick 3 sources other than the state dashboard, which is usually student interviews, adult interviews, administrator or teacher interviews, right? And try to get some information as to why they feel that this group has been marginalized based on the data. Now, you may show them the data and they might go, holy moly, I had no idea. And that's good, right? It's not good for academics, but it's good for you because now you're going to be enlightening them and saying, okay, if this is the case, what do you think the cause might be? Right? And they may say, yeah, we have a lot of English learners and we don't have the support for the kids to do that, right? To actually help as needed, or some of our students come in with such a low working vocabulary that they're not caught up by the time they get to 9th grade or 8th grade or whatever it might be. Okay.
Russ,
Yes.
can you show an example? Because when I look at the dashboard, and there's all kinds of data, and they're dividing things by, EL and different ethnics and the like, but what's the gap point that we're looking at?
Russ, just 2 quick questions in the chat. Is a middle school okay to use, and can I use an alternative ed high school?
Yes and yes. All right. I'm going to pick a random school, the one my wife seems to teach at. How's that? So this is the California State Dashboard if you've never seen it. If you want whatever year, you have to go back and you have to select it here. All right. Just be mindful of that. I'm going to go back to 2018. All right. And I'm going to look at this. So there's these big areas here. All right. And if you see where these are their scores on that, right? So red and orange and yellow are getting, red is the worst possibly you can get, right? And then again, we want the dial to be as much to the right as possible on the blue. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at suspension rates, let's say, and I'm going to click on this and it's going to bring me to this. Okay. And you're going to see there, it increased by 1%, right? Which we're not looking for that. What we are looking for, right, is what's going on here. So I'm going to click down here where it says see more details. And then it's going to let me know what groups are being suspended at what rate. And so I'm going to see English learners are being suspended at 9.2%. Foster youth is being suspended at 25%. Red flag alert, right? Now there's a data table you're going to have to fill out that'll show this data for you that you're going to have to put in. But I'm just saying, and then 13% for 2 or more races. Right? They didn't have any other. So that's the red. Those are the most dangerous. Look at the orange, right? So only 4.6, 4.4, 4. I mean, so overall, it's not bad. Now, African-American kids are doing fine compared to a lot of groups, right? Still not as bad as some of the others. And then students with disabilities are also 8.7, right? So you're going to have to fill this out. But remember, you're going to have to go to red, orange, yellow, and then there's nobody in the green or blue. Right. And so if there's none, when you fill out that chart, you'll see it. All right. If you want to go to academics, right, I'm going to go back. And then we can look at again. Sorry, I went right past it. So if I want academic performance, here's math. Here's English language arts math. Here's your EL progress, and here's your college and career indicator. Okay. So for Nicole, was it you who asked me about the science and all that stuff? For most high schools, at least, you're not going to see that.
Not yet anyway. It's coming, don't worry.
Okay,
But I was looking at the district level and I was looking at local indicators.
Yeah,
So that's what I
yeah.
was looking at.
okay. Questions, comments, or concerns? And you're gonna fill out a worksheet for this, so it's not as daunting as it might seem yet. So take a breath, right? But any initial questions, and this is Dashboard 101, I know I did it quick, but you can't
Thank you.
break this. You need to practice with it and play with it. That's the whole purpose, is you need to be able to look at data, both qualitatively and quantitatively, and look at where your gaps are and start to address them. Questions out loud or anything in the chat we can help you with?
Ross, I just had a quick question. So the student group, that has to be from the initial data collection table, right? Where it says English learners, foster youth, homeless. Like basically we pick one student group from that list of groups in the table.
You pick your most needy group, your biggest gap. Yes.
Okay.
That's what I'm saying. It's simpler than it might look, right? And once you fill out the worksheet, it's going to be really clear. Like last couple of years, I had people say, oh, I'm concentrating on African-American males or Hispanic females or this or that. And I would say, why? When you got this group that's far lower, you don't get to pick because you would rather work with a certain group or anything else. You don't get to do that. You get to pick by who has the biggest need, right? So you don't pick it, it picks you. Let me be very clear on that, okay? We're looking at our biggest equity gap analysis, right? We want to see the students who need the most. Anything else I can go or say before, or you guys need help with before we move on? If you need Dashboard 101, just let me know and we can set an appointment up if you really are stuck. Remember, my number one rule is suffering is not mandatory. Okay. I have people say, I've been working on this for 4 days and I can't figure it out. I'm like, should have called me after 2 hours. Right? Don't, most of it's a quick email or a phone call or a text. Okay. Step 2 is the plan part. So you're going to identify potential contributing factors, institutional and or structural. This could, and you'll see the sample in a minute, but this could be that our EL students don't have enough primary support, right? This could be that when students are suspended, they're never reintegrated. There's no plan to come up with how they're going to go back to school and catch up in their work and also be social emotionally well, right? It could be anything like we have no math and English support beyond the regular school day, right? Or tier 2 or 3 interventions. Okay. Step 3, you're going to act. So using the problem statement, what you're going to do is develop potential strategies. Okay. Potential strategies. You're not going to implement these strategies. You are going to do the research and find out if I have a high number of foster youth being suspended, I'm going to do some research as to what are some potential things that I could do if I was going to implement at my school. Four is reflection. I don't know why, and I think I have a theory. It's because attrition catches up and kicks you in the backside, but we don't do very well with reflective writing, and it's the easiest points we leave on the table. Please take your time in the reflection and answer the question thoroughly, right? Because you should never lose points on this. You should get full points on this rubric. Let's break it down a little bit now. So again, these are the big 6, okay? These are the 6 you should look at for the purpose of this. Chronic absenteeism, suspension rate, English learners, graduation rate, academic performance, and college and career. I will tell you this, chronic absenteeism might be something that a lot of people like to look at, but I'm going to tell you this one is a little more tricky. All right. And so I would just be cautious with this. I would say if you can dig into the academic or the suspension rate, you're probably better off. But I'm not going to say you can't. Okay.
Ross,
Yeah.
what if you're looking at those 3 years? And just for example, let's say that, you know, the 2 most recent years, the problem was suspension rate, but the most, you know, the one that's 3 years back, it was English learners and there wasn't anything showing for suspension rate.
Mhm.
Should you pick a different topic altogether? I mean,
Well, I would say the best, yeah, the most clear and clean data you have is probably the best. But what I would say is too, is there might be one group that did better and started to improve, right? And so if I would take the average over time, but if there's one group that's really improving, then I would go with that, right? So I would look at the data and say, where is our biggest area or gap, right? And if it's absenteeism, you might say, let me look at suspension or math or English, right? You might find, and here's why I say that, I should have explained this. Usually poor academic performance is an implication of people not coming to school regularly, right?
Right.
So when we look at causal, it's usually more of a cause and effect. And so I'm not a big fan of using the chronic absenteeism because I think that's a cause piece, right? And also kids who are suspended a lot have chronic absenteeism by definition.
right.
Did that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Hannah has a question.
Okay. Fire away.
Yeah,
Hannah.
yeah, Ross, just to add to that. So I want to confirm, if I look at academic performance as an indicator, we should be specific with the core subject. So you would just focus on math or focus on ELA.
Mhm.
What do you recommend for that indicator,
Well,
academic
if it's
performance?
if it's both, then it's both, right? But I would pick the biggest gap. Right. So
Got it.
again,
Yeah.
you know, and you're gonna find, you know, that a lot of times it's gonna be foster youth, but I would also look and say, like, though our foster youth have this or that, like, you may not even have enough people, a significant subgroup of foster youth at your school to actually count on the dashboard. Right. So even though you know your subgroup is hurting, maybe from data you have internally, you got to stick to what the dashboard tells you. If you get to it and you need help and say, Ross, look, here's what I'm looking at. Should I pick this or that? Then let's do that, right? But I would say, like, when you look at the academic rate, you could say our such and such group has the lowest or biggest gap in both math and English, but I would stick to the biggest gap, either math or English, if I was you.
Okay, that clears it up. Thank you.
You got it. Good questions,
Will you
everybody.
preface something to the effect of, math and English have the biggest gap, but for the sake of this study, we're going to focus on math?
If the math is a bigger gap than English, yes.
Okay,
Right? It's very rare that it might be pretty darn close, right? But
right.
pick the
So
one
that's
with
what
the
I mean. If
biggest.
they're really close, you just pick one and just dive deeper.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
What I've seen before is, like, I've seen people like with a huge suspension rate, like on their data table, and then they decide to pick one for math or English or something else. I'm like, wait a minute. If you have disproportionality when it comes to suspension, you've got to look at that too, right? So I don't know, but if you want to share your data with me and say, Ross, I'm struggling with, after I filled out the data chart, I'm struggling with what to choose. Let's talk about it. Okay. You could justify it by not doing a certain thing based on, yeah, but this group's starting to get a little bit better, but you're going to have to justify it in your written word.
Mhm.
And or you're going to have to interview teachers too, or get some balancing of qualitative and quantitative. So, all right, I'm not going to go over the rubrics, but they're here for you. Okay. Whenever you're saying anything like, did I answer this question thoroughly? Did I do it? Use the rubrics, folks. They're there for you, right? As teachers, how many times have we told students, did you read, why did I get an F on this? Did you look at the rubric? No. Well, look at the rubric. It's here. Key points from rubric. Again, I'm not going to go over these, but looking at general patterns, your focus area, and your data findings. So again, this is here for you, but I'm not going to go specifically on that for time's sake. Important notes. I am going to go over this. When you select your indicator, make sure that you do your quantitative data and be mindful of any bias you may bring to that indicator. Okay. Again, I kind of talked about this a little bit, but you got to go in with an open mind and go where the data tells you. All right. And again, we want a broad understanding of how your students are score doing, and we want to look at if students are not doing well, instead of blaming them or their families or the universe or politics or anything else, we need to set all that crap aside and say the system is producing this, right? Our system is producing an inequity somehow. And I'm not going to blame anything, but we need to get down to some root causes if we want to fix it. There's my equity stance. I will not budge on that. Right? I'll tell you that right now. I will not budge. You need to be able to do this. As a first-year principal, when I took over a school in the middle of Moreno Valley and people kept telling me that African-American males were my most at-risk students, and I did the gap analysis gap myself, and they were the third most at risk in almost every area. When African-American females were getting suspended 3 times the amount of our African-American males, we did not have an African-American male problem. And guess where all our LCAP money went to? African-American males, as you might guess. That's malpractice, folks. And it ended with me. And so I take this very seriously. This is an equity issue. If we're not meeting the needs of our most marginalized students, it's an equity issue indeed. So there, I've said my piece, sermon over. Let's move forward. Again, looking at these, I'm not going to go over all this. You can read all this, but I don't think it's as germane to what we need to go over tonight. We just need to really look at this last one. Be careful not to allow any preconceived understandings or personal bias, right? Which I just kind of talked about. If one group of kids seems like they're getting in trouble more than others, right? I would look at the data. Maybe it's not right. Maybe it's your experience or your lens or your own bias. Doesn't make you a bad person unless you don't look at the data. There's an old saying that goes in data we trust, everybody else must pay cash. Right? And I kind of go with that. Okay. I don't know much about your Saturday classes, but in Dashboard, I think there's a worksheet that looks like this. And so basically, if you don't have to use this, it's not a template that you turn in, but there's some worksheets that will help you. Maybe if you want to use this, you can put your vision, the equity, goals and objectives, and then you can look at your indicators. It might be a good way to organize your thoughts. I don't know anybody who has said this has helped them too much. But I will say that I want to offer it as a way to organize your thoughts if you like. Okay. You're not going to have to turn it into me or anything else. I don't know if you have to do it for your signature assignment. In Dashboard, I'm not sure what's in there, but I know that there are some assignments in Dashboard that mesh with the Cal APA. Okay. You'll see here's a sample of somebody who filled this out, which would be very helpful if you filled it out in doing your template when you actually do the work, okay? And you notice they do have their problem statement. So in this case, focus on developing practices and procedures to reduce suspension of Hispanic students. Nothing fancy or flashy, it's to the point, right? We're not convoluting the problem. We're saying, here is our pain point, right? We're suspending Hispanic students too much compared to others. Here's what the template, this is what the template looks like. And I want to caution you on this. You get 5 pages for the first cycle or step 1 of this cycle, but the data tables don't count. So you're going to have a data table here, which is the state indicators. And you'll see there's 3 years they want all the information on whatever indicator you want to use. So if I pick suspension, I would do 3 years of data for these. If you have no significant subgroup of African-American, Filipino, Hispanic, you just put NA. All right. Or you could put not significant subgroup, but you don't leave it blank. Okay. So when you fill out the data table, you're going to have to fill it out like this. Could you use more than one indicator? You could if you're gonna, but I don't suggest you get too convoluted with this. All right. So with that, you'll see, and unfortunately it carried over, but this will all be on one page. The second part is you're going to have to do the qualitative data. for those of you who haven't got your doctorate degree or you've never worked with qualitative versus quantitative, it's okay. Your qualitative data is trying to get down to the root cause. This is the interviews. This is the, maybe talk to the principal, maybe talk to an EL teacher, maybe talk to a counselor, maybe talk to a student or parent. Okay. You're going to have to list the source, and you're going to have to talk about, when it says, make sure you thoroughly explain what data you gathered. Yes, but you don't, this doesn't have to be War and Peace, and you'll see in the samples. You need to have at least 3 here, right? And on top of it, it doesn't count towards your 5 pages. Your tables in both the quantitative and qualitative are not don't count toward your 5 pages of narrative. I'm going to pause for a second and ask for questions. Oops. Sorry.
I have one.
Yes, please.
For the qualitative data, are we like how from nursing, I have used qualitative data a lot, but then like using like phenomenology, like you have to get so many and find the commonalities. I mean, how much do they want us to do that in this?
So you're going to interview or like do empathy interviews with like 3 people.
Okay.
Right? And I would mix it up. I would say maybe AP or principal, but if you're doing math, then let's go to the source. Right? I would say, let's talk to the math department chair. Let's talk to the counselor and maybe talk to an administrator.
Oh, okay.
So I would do what's relevant. If you're talking about suspension, maybe you want to go to the AP, right? Because the AP is usually the person who's doing it. You might want to go to whatever your PBIS coordinator is. You may be going to, a teacher or somebody, or maybe even a student, right? And say, hey, what about suspensions, right? So and basically all you have to do is find out, like, hey, here would be my question, like, hey, Lisa, I'm doing a study for my admin credential, and our school data shows that Hispanic males are being suspended 4 times the amount of any other significant subgroup. Do you have any like ideas or theories about what's going on our campus that may cause this?
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. You can tell I've done some empathy interviews, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I have a question.
Yes.
In that example, what if you or I happen to be the PBIS coordinator? So then who else would you talk to?
I don't know. I would talk to the people that are closest to the problem first.
Okay.
Right. So if it's suspensions, I mean, I would talk to the AP first. Right. I would maybe talk to, if there's anybody who does like a high school counselor, right, or social work, or anybody who has to deal with that, right? Or you may want to talk to a student. Now, keep in mind, if you talk to a student, you might get some weirdness. Like, so unless you're at a high school or middle school where the kid can clearly articulate that, like, if you say, hey, did you know, kid, that our Hispanic kids are getting suspended 4 times the amount, they might go, that's BS, man. Why they got to pick, right? Like, okay, I mean, maybe they're not ready for that conversation, right? So, and I would never suggest you cold call on a student you don't know, right? That's awkward for everybody, right? So if you're going to use student empathy interview, just be mindful you should know the student and really be objective, right? And with that.
I have a question real quick. Is this
Yeah.
going to be videoed, or is it going to be
Nope.
camcorder? Good. Okay.
Nope,
Perfect.
you just write down your findings.
Okay.
And you'll see a sample of that in a minute. Here's the equity gap. So you'll see the first question here is investigate the vision, mission, and or goals at your school and document your findings. It's not rocket science, right? By the way, that counts towards the 5 pages, by the way, but the tables don't. Okay, and then the other questions are really, after you get through that, they're pretty straightforward, right? And you'll see them as you go, but as long as you look at the question, answer it, I would look at the rubric and you should be fine, right? There's this piece, which is what you need to do. This is kind of what you turn in, right? So template for item 1, you're going to do for cycle 1, you turn in, there's a template that's both on the website and in the Google Doc that I gave you guys earlier. And then, so you're going to turn in the tables with the written narrative. And again, no more than 5 pages above the data table. All right. And then template 2, again, you're going to look at the 6 California state indicators, right? And then you're going to go through again and go from there.
This information we are currently collecting with our frameworks and stuff. Is there on the website, is then there the template that we put all that stuff into?
Yeah, I'll show you in a minute. Yeah. The template basically is going to look like these. And I have them in Word docs for you, so you can just fill them in and submit them. But you can also download them from the Cal APA website too. So, which I'll talk about at the end. All right. So, and again, here's the templates. You'll see also in the guide, it'll tell you exactly what you need to turn in. But on this one, there's no videos unless you want to do your reflection through video. But I'm going to tell you right now, if you do that, you're a fool. It's a pain to upload it and do all that stuff. I would not do video for your reflection, although it gives you the option. And somebody will ask, Ross, should I do a video? And I'll laugh and say, please don't. You're going to have to do plenty of videos before this is over with. You don't want to do this one. So again, the rubric is here. I'm not going to go over all of them. There's also a kind of a checklist or essential checklist thing that you have access to if you'd like to use it. All right, but I'm not going to go over it, but it's here for you. So part 2 is the plan. So again, you're going to do a written narrative, which are contributing factors and problem statement template. And so again, the questions are there. What potential contributing factors are suggested by the data? How do these contributing factors include institutional or structural factors, right? And cite research. Now, this one, you are going to have to do a little bit of research here. Like, according to such and such, suspensions of students who are foster youth are traditionally been more higher in the California, yada, yada. So you will have to do a little bit. I'll show you a sample. And then identify areas of educational need for that group, right? And so we'll show you some of the samples as we go. But in here again, you'll see there's sample answers here for you to look at, okay? So I know it's too small for you to see now, but you will be able to look at that, right? And also on the side here, you'll see there's some notes about being responsive to culture and context and so forth. Those are all things that are from the rubric that'll help. I see there's like 7 things on my screen for the chat. Did I miss anything?
No, I think you're good.
Okay. All right. So on step 2, again, what you need to do is, based on your equity gap analysis, right, and the qualitative and quantitative, determine institutional and or structural factors. You've done both the data, you see the data, right, and you've done some interviews. Now you have to talk about it, right? Maybe over the last 5 years, we've had an influx of EL students and we've never caught up with the correct staffing and or support, right? Or beyond our regular math class, we really have no tier 2 interventions for students who are struggling. Or maybe we don't have a way to universally screen students, and so they might not be placed right? Whatever it might be are the structural factors you're going to have to call out. By the way, do not use the name of your real school. Do not use the name of your real school, and do not use teacher, administrator, or anybody else's name in your Cal APA work. Bias will set in. You could just put at school XYZ or at my school, okay? And then based on your equity gap, you're going to look at potential contributing factors you have determined for the group of students, right? And then you're going to do your problem statement. And so again, the evidence is all written narrative pretty much, no more than 5 pages. And folks, if you turn in more than 5 pages, they might just fail you without even reading it. Let me be very clear on that. Do not turn in more than 5 pages or they won't even grade it. And you're going to have to pay again to have it regraded. Again, here's the rubric. No tricks, no formulas, postulates, theorems, straightforward. 3 is the act part. So again, here's what the template looks like, right? And then again, breaking it down, you're going to look at the equity gap and describe potential strategies. So now you might say one strategy for reducing suspension might be PBIS, right? One might be de-escalation, whatever it is, you're going to look at potential strategies. All right. And you're going to talk about how those strategies might address the equity gap at your school. And then looking at that, right? You're going to explain how your potential strategies for improvement address or take into account potential contributing factors. If you find that there's a certain group that's being suspended way more than other groups, do you think we might have a bias problem at our school? Just saying. And then look at what targeted feedback you receive from your supervisor. So you are going to have to look at the stakeholders. Again, that's your data that you're taking in step 1, right? So it should be right there for you. Again, you're going to, based on your data collection, you're going to look at the equity gap analysis. You're going to solicit targeted feedback on your potential strategies, right? You run it. I would run this by your principal, AP, or somebody you work with to make sure that, you know, they understand and kind of get some of the information here. If you're new to a site or you're using a site that's not traditionally your own, you probably need to sit down with an AP or principal and find out more information about the history or what's going on at the site. And then you're going to explain how you would adapt your potential strategies for equitable student and school improvement. You're only going to explain how you'd adapt, but you're not going to actually do the action. Let me repeat that. You're going to explain what you would do, but you're not going to actually do it. Okay. In your next one, you're going to have to facilitate a community of practice where you will do something. But this one, you don't. Again, your evidence to submit is your written narrative. Guess what? No more than 5 pages. Rubrics. Step 4 is reflection. All you got to do is answer the question.
Is there a minimum number that looks better?
I would say if you're less than 3, you're probably not answering it with enough depth.
Okay.
But I would say you should be around 4 to 5. You know, you should somewhere be around 4 pages, like pretty easily. Because remember, the questions take up a little bit, and see where these two, like the 2 marks are. You have to answer between those 2 marks. Which brings me to a good kind of way to pause here and go, you need to answer your questions in the template and upload the whole template. All right. Make sure you upload the template and don't do it on your own. Don't make a new template. Don't redo the data table. Don't be a hero. Use the template. Don't be creative. They don't want creativity. All right. Oops.
When you
Sorry.
say 5 pages, you mean 5 pages per each reflection, like, or no?
5 pages for each cycle, or for each step. I'm sorry.
Okay,
So there's 4 steps, right?
okay.
So 5 pages for each. So what I would tell you is this: a lot of people do their initial data gap analysis and do part 1 and then send it to me and say, Ross, what do you think? And I usually say, thumbs up, go forward and prosper, or please call me, which is a euphemism for let's get this right the first time. If you do your whole thing wrong, that's not good. And I want to be able to help you, but you may have to undo a lot more work. So my thing is, let me know, show me the data, email it to me, or share it to me with Google Docs, and we'll be better off. Okay. So the reflective piece is there. I love this last one. Based on the analysis of your experience in cycle 1, identify specific professional learning goals and describe next steps for growth. That is the so what, right? We've done this data gap analysis. We've looked at the causes. We've looked at possible root causes and or bias. We've looked at all these things. Now, what would you do, right? If you had the keys to the kingdom and you could do professional learning, what would you do? It might be implicit bias, right? It might be math intervention training. It might be a studio model, it might be whatever it is, but understand you're gonna have to come up with something and justify it. Okay. What you need to do, reflective narrative, no more than 5 pages. And or I should say, 5-minute video explanation. I've only had one student do this in my 6 years of working with this program and my 7 years of working with the San Diego County Office of Ed. And the one person who did this, their video failed and they wound up getting 0. I would not suggest you do the video here. I don't see a need for it. Okay, it just opens up for problems. You'll have plenty of chances for videos down the road. Rubric provided for you, essential questions, key considerations. We're not taking a break. So here's the deal. In this slide deck, which is already available to you, all the technical pieces are here. So what I want you to look at is that here's the points, right? So you could get a maximum on cycle 1 of 40 points. 14 is the cut score. That was easy to say, is the cut score to pass. If you answer the questions and do a decent job, you only need to get like halfway through the rubric on each one. Now, I'm not saying that you should, right? I'm saying most scores that I've found from our students are usually in the mid to high 20s. All right. So 14 is the cut score. And Cal APA 2 and 3, it's only 12, which may not mean much to you now, but you'll see the scoring in the rubrics, right? And you'll kind of get what you need for each. Okay, I'm not going over the rest of it, but this is all the technical information, including where to sign up, how to sign up, what to do, so forth and so forth. I am going to give you one caution piece of information, which I've talked to you again. Make sure you review your personal information and pay attention to your name. Use the name that you're going to have on your credential or you have on your credential or that's most legal now. Okay? Because if you don't, they're not going to know it's you and they're not going to give you the credit for it. The other thing is this, it's going to ask you, and again, all this is in here, it's going to ask you about a program. Please, please, please write this down, tattoo it on one of your arms, do whatever you need to do, carve it in your desk. The program you are in, according to this, is Sacramento County Office of Education. Sacramento County Office of Education. Do not write SCOE, do not write ACSA, do not write Ross is the homie, none of that stuff. Has to be Sacramento County Office of Education. My colleagues and I have done such painstaking steps that this walks you through every last piece. Okay? Here's the deal. I don't get to see this. You do. So step 1, always go back to this. If it's a technical question, like, is this a year-long program? Is it a units? Is it a semester? Those things, send me a text or email and I can get back to you on that, right? And don't worry about that, but it's all in here, okay? We're only on 69 and it goes up to almost 100 slides, but it's only that way because it's step by step. It should be pretty foolproof, right? 12-month program, traditional, all this stuff, okay? Anything that there's a red arrow, it indicates what you should do. This is the question I get the most. Program length, it's 7 to 15 credit hours, okay? It's all here in the slide deck. And this slide deck can be found, a version of it that's probably better than this, can be found in that website that I gave you.
There's a question in the chat.
Okay.
2 questions. Are there updates on the Cal APA reimbursement or just sign up for all parts for now?
So the update is that I don't know what the capacity is on those, right? They were capacity controlled, and I don't know if that's been reached or not, but you still have to pay and be reimbursed. The rationale for that was they were worried that a lot of people would sign up and get a waiver and then not take it. Right? And then they'd be stuck holding the bag and it would take away from other students. So I'm sorry I don't have more information on that, but what I would say is sign up for the tests once you register and everything else. And if you can, pay for them, and you should be eligible for the reimbursement depending on the capacity. And I'm sorry I don't have more information on that. We live in California, which, you know, everything's as clear as mud. So
And
I
there-
wish I could help you on that, but we don't apply for anything. It simply goes through based on you registering and if there's capacity left for that.
There's a couple questions about changing information if someone already registered. So if you already registered, can you go back and change information? For example, if you answered a question incorrect, can you go back and change that? Or if you signed up and put the wrong semester hours, can you go back and change that if you already registered?
Something little like the semester hours, I really wouldn't worry about. It's not that consequential, but if you didn't put Sacramento County Office Vet or anything else, you need to go back and edit that. Yeah, and it should be editable. You should be able to edit profile. Editable, that was easy to say. It's not edible, you can't eat it, but you can edit it. So
Another question, can you register for all tests at one time or just one cycle at a time?
I believe you can. Just remember your clock starts ticking once you do it. So I think you have a year to get them all done.
It will only allow you to register for one at a time.
Really? Oh, that's probably because of the waiver.
No,
what
that's
I'm
not
guessing.
accurate. You can sign up for all of them at one time. You just have to check out at 3 different times. You can't you can't combine them into one checkout.
Okay, that's the way it was in the past. So
Yeah.
okay. That's why we do this. We can learn from each other too.
So if somebody put 10-month program, that's okay.
Yeah, it's not going to kill you. They're not going to. Yeah. That stuff's not as important. The reason we need Sacramento County Office of Ed on there is because it goes through our credential analyst. So at the end, they're going to have to look at that as an official transcript. And if you don't put Sacramento County Office of Ed, they don't send the scores to our transcript analysis. Right. And then we can't issue you a credential, and it's a real pain in the backside for everybody. So please, 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 Sacramento County Office of Ed.
And then finally, where do we find your slideshow at?
So the slide deck that I put up there can be found in two places. One in the Google Doc that on Dr. Rose Weebly, there's a section that says Google folder. You can click on that. But if I was you, I would really take a good hard look at the resources through that website. One other resource I do want to show you, hold on, let me get to it because it is in my Google Docs here. I'll have to reshare my screen. And this is on Dr. Rose Weebly. There's a link to it, but let me get into my Cal APA folder here. Sorry, if you're like me, you have 5 million Google folders now, and they never seem to go away. ACSA Cal APA documents, there we go. And then, so I'm going to share my screen one more time. Can you guys still see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. So what you're going to see is this piece here. You'll see that there's training modules. PowerPoints are right here for you guys. The dates might not have been updated on the due dates, okay, on these, but they're there. And then when you look at this, there's this Cal APA folder. If you open it up, you'll see 1, 2, and 3. There's the overview that I did at the first day. There's also the assessment overview guide is here as well. And when I click on Cal APA 1, you're going to see this. I provided all the templates here for you to download in Word format. But you can also get them off of that website I gave you as well. I've also done this. There's a sample in here. You can look at the sample as well as on the Cal APA website. The other thing that I really appreciate is a former student of ours from years ago did this. if you click on these different areas, it'll take you to submission checklists for each part. Like submission 1, right? The checklist. It'll go, this prompt guide is really helpful. It's going to have you make a copy so you don't mess it up. But each prompt, investigate the mission, it'll give you bullet points of the best way to answer the question. So if I was you,
That to us. I like that.
yes, I do too. Trust me. All right. So if I was you, I would get into this and take a look because it can be a very helpful document. Okay. And it also goes over like we're not doing the peer review, but it also even has considerations of things you may want to consider before you submit. Kind of a checklist, right?
Another question in the chat, for the interview portion of cycle 1, are we able to ask people who are no longer at our site? For example,
Yes.
someone who worked with the data we were looking at, but changed sites this year.
Absolutely. As long, and don't mention their names, right? We're just saying titles. The assistant principal in charge of student discipline or this or that. Don't name names. No names. All right.
And Ross, how many hours would you say it takes to complete all the information needed for, cycle 1? Just for time management.
I would say of all of them, it's probably the least amount. I mean, depending on how soon you can do your data, your initial data, which I think that could take I would start, obviously filling in the mission, vision, and goals doesn't take very long, right? That's readily available. I would do the data analysis, fill out the table. That could take a couple hours, right? And then I think the hardest part is getting the interviews done so you can balance out the qual and the quan. And so I would say maybe total 10 to 15 hours, maybe over the time period it might take. And depending, I don't know how fast you guys write. You know what I mean? The thought process is different for everybody. So I wish.
Just a rough estimate. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
It's very helpful. Thank you.
You're welcome. And here's the thing I want you to know. I've learned to be both the angel and the devil sometimes in the same week. And I know that this is a lot on you. This is the biggest hurdle in the program as far as accountability. But 2 things I'm going to say about it. One is it's probably the most on-the-job, impactful thing you're going to do to prepare you to be a leader, right? Not from a charismatic or a technical versus adaptive piece, right? It's the most technical way to prepare you. The adaptive piece is you learning the things in the chats and having the conversations and so forth, right? But as far as the technical piece, learning how to do this work and looking at equity gaps and finding voice around it, right? Learning how to run communities of practice, which is the second one, and the third one, which is giving teacher feedback. There's nothing more important for the well-being of your students academically and social emotionally than be able to do that. So I will say this, though it's a lot of work and though it's the bulk of the challenge of this program, it's the best way to prepare you to do well, in my opinion, to be an administrator. I'm going to tell you, I had to figure all this stuff out on my own, folks. My first year being an AP, they threw me the keys, and if nobody got killed or pregnant, it was a good year, right? And I say that jokingly, but I'm not kidding you. I was not prepared because I didn't have anything like this to prepare me. So with that, I'm going to say it again. Suffering is not mandatory. It's completely optional. If you have a question, if you need help, please reach out. I pride myself on being as accessible as possible. If you call me and I don't answer, it means I'm busy. It doesn't mean I won't take your call. I will call you back. I would say email is always better, but a lot of times when people have questions, I might say, hey, can you pop on a Zoom call tomorrow at 6 o'clock, right? And we could do it that way. Most of the time, I'd rather see you face to face or talk to you or anything else. Okay. Is there anything else I can do for you tonight?
I just have one more question. So, at what you mentioned feedback. So you suggested after completing, like finding our initial quantitative data, is that the best time to get your feedback, or when did you suggest? Was
I
the
would
best
say do all of, I would say if you're not, let's say you do your initial data dive from the dashboard. If you're not sure about anything at that point, then contact me. If you're sure and you know what the data gap is, then finish one, right? I would finish step one and then say, hey, Ross, can you take a look? And usually the bonus, right? Here's the bonus with that. I will usually look at your work and say, oh, so your problem statement is that African-American students are getting suspended 3 times as much as any other group on campus. So if you listen to my words carefully, I probably just did your homework right there for part 2, right? Because if I don't, guess what? You didn't do a clear job in part 1. If I can't look at your initial work in part 1 and reiterate what the gap is, then you have not made it 100% abundantly clear. And when you don't make it clear, do not pass go, do not collect $100. Good question. Anything else?
Thank
I'll
you.
stick on for a little bit. I'm going to stop the recording now because I hate being recorded, but I will stop that and then